Hi folks, I'm just going to quickly recap with you on this one. Just going to run through this lesson reasonably quickly, just so I can make sure that you're okay on that, and then we're going to be pushing on to do the lesson 3. So lesson 2, Hinduism, Confucianism. We're looking to try and see basically why Karl Weber says, well, capitalism emerged because of Calvinism in the UK, but didn't emerge in other places, even though there were the features present. Okay, so when we look at China, well, China actually, in theory, should have been ahead of the game. It should have smashed out the gate. They had clocks before, and clocks are really important in this concept of working efficiently when it comes to your time management. And a lot of industrial nations, a lot of capitalism is kind of revolving around using workers' time efficiently and effectively. And time and motion studies are known as kind of the bane to the working man, because basically they're used in order to try and work out how we can squeeze that extra little bit of productivity out of the workforce. And so in theory, having clocks gives you the ability to start doing that. But why did China not become capitalist? Because they had quite an indulgent culture at the time. That might actually be our answer there. Let's have a look. So Weber notes that certain societies have had a higher level of economic development than Northern Europe in the 16th, 17th century. Okay, so we weren't the first to get there. So why is it when China and India kind of beat us there to the punch? Why was it that it was the UK and northern states of Europe that went on to become these industrialized powerhouses? Well, Weber argues that it's because of a lack of religious belief systems like Calvinism. Okay, he's not saying it's just Calvinism, but he's saying it's ones like Calvinism. He says that while in India, with Hinduism, we had this dominant ascetic religion, so favouring renouncing of the material world, so not focused on that, and that was similar to Calvinism. They have a problem that their focus is otherworldly, directing the followers towards the spiritual world, so that they don't seek to gain in this world, prove their worth and redemption. So in India, we have that problem that, yeah, we've got one feature, but we don't have the second. When we then look at China, it goes the opposite way. So, like Calvinism, Confucianism, as it was the religion on the old Chinese empire, was this worldly, but it wasn't ascetic. So people were indulgent, and they saw that prosperity as something to enjoy and luxuriate in. So when they earn money, they then go and spend it on lavish things. They buy those beautiful silks, they build those grand palaces, they indulge themselves. And so the wealth doesn't then lead to greater prosperity because they don't reinvest in the same way. So this means that while the belief that having possessions in this world enables you to show your holiness and to a greater extent, the simple fact is that they don't believe in doing without. So because they don't believe in doing without, they then don't reinvest that spare money they have because they don't have spare money. They spend it on the latest tickets to the latest events, to the nicest things, all that sort of stuff. They spend, not reinvest. So when we look at China, we see they live a lavish lifestyle, and that's kind of why capitalism doesn't actually kick off there properly, because simply put, we don't have that. So no capitalism in either. So both the Hinduism and Confucianism did not lend itself because it didn't have the combination that Calvinism did, which is the asceticism and the this worldly orientation. Remember, Calvinists are terrified that they don't know whether they're going to heaven or hell. Okay, so they try and do everything in this world to help gain some level of certainty about what's going to happen next, even though they know it's impossible. Okay, so that's why Weber said that they were the drivers of capitalism, and why Weber is saying that religion can be, in the right circumstances, with the right combination of factors. There's a lot of ifs there, isn't there? It can be a force for social change, because our society has changed massively from that mercantile one which it was before to what we recognise as modern capitalism. And Weber is arguing that that happened because of the combination of those two factors, and that actually the big societal change in our society in Northern Europe was driven by religion. Therefore, religion's a force for social change. So it goes against the Marxists, goes against feminists, goes against the functionists in that I'm making that statement. Let's go to the evaluation then. So Weber, often described as debating with Marx's ghost. Marx saw his economic or material factors as driving force, whereas Weber argues actually that it's material factors alone are simply not enough. Yeah, it's not just about what you've got. It's not about who has what. It is actually about that moral, spiritual aspect as well. He's saying there's more. So Weber, as we've seen, it also says it needs to be specific factors. It has to be the beliefs and the values that bring about this change. So it has to be a joint combination. So he's saying it has to be quite a specific set of ideas in order to have religion as a force for social change, but that such things can occur. Marxists have responded to their own criticism of Weber. So Klutsky, in 1927, argues that he can't, Weber overestimates the economic factors in bringing about capitalism into being. He argues that the fact capitalism preceded rather than followed Calvinism. So he's arguing that actually we can see the traits and the tenets of capitalism before, and maybe, you know what, maybe that shaped the forming of Calvinism. So he argues that it goes the other way. Then we have R.H. Tawney in 26, who argues for technological change. Remember we talked about the spinning jenny. So Calvinist believes in legitimate to pursue the economic gain. 1976. The spinning jenny was a massive thing. What we're doing is this is like the technology driving things forward. So it enables much quicker spinning of wool. Now, if you have much quicker spinning of wool, you can effectively make wool quicker, which means if you can make the raw material for textiles quicker, you can then have less time spent producing or more wool. When you have more wool, you have more time for experimentation. You also then have other things, which we can then see starts to drive the Industrial Revolution in Europe. Yeah, it is literally driven by wool. We don't tend to think about it that much, but we were a major producer of wool, and wool was used in everything. Yeah, so you got to consider that actually wool made the UK and Europe a powerhouse, and it drives the Industrial Revolution. And Tony's saying, look, hang on, it's not great to have wool and lights production in China in the same way at the same time. There's other factors. The fact they don't have the spinning jenny means that China doesn't advance there. They might got clocks, but they didn't get the jenny. And as such, it's argued that it's the Industrial Revolution which creates Calvinism, which creates capitalism, and which drives the change, not Calvinism. So Weber is also criticised because capitalism did not develop in every country where there were Calvinisms. So Scotland is a nation which basically it has Calvinism. We can still find people who are Calvinists today, but the simple point is the population is so spread out and the transport routes are so problematic that it doesn't develop. You got a lot of sheep in Scotland, you got a lot of wool, but you know what? it doesn't become a hub, a centre for industry in the same way as the UK does. The geography and the geographical interconnected nature of the UK, of England, enabled us to have that revolution. Whereas, unfortunately, with the relative isolation left within Scotland, remember, no straight roads. The Romans didn't get there. As such, kind of left them a bit behind. So we have the faith, but we don't have the Industrial Revolution. We don't have capitalism. So that's a problem. However, Gordon Marshall does argue that actually there's a lack of investment capital and skilled labour. And that was actually the reason why it didn't develop there. And he argues that supports Weber's point, that you need both material and the cultural factors to be present for capitalism to emerge. So this is kind of like a counterpoint on this, and they're really important when we look at essays there. So Gordon Marshall is coming back and he's saying, you know what, actually, I think your point is actually proving what Weber's saying correct. So the Marxists are kind of shooting themselves in the foot here by criticising it. Oh yeah, we're at Scotland, because actually we have that issue there. Okay. Last point then. So others argue that Calvinists were among the first capitalists. This was not because of their beliefs, but simply because they're excluded by the law from political office. And we see this with loads of the faiths when they're excluded from that. They go excluded from these major things. They go and they focus and they build their wealth and all that sort of stuff because simply put, they don't engage with other areas which kind of distract. Yeah, being involved in local government. Well, you're not generating your own wealth all the time, are you? Yeah, you're not doing those things, not reinvesting. Getting involved in the army and wars. Well, you know what? It's costly. And if you're not involved in that, then actually you don't have those costs. So we can see that actually Calvinism might simply have become prominent in the capitalist movement because Jewish people and Calvinists were excluded from other areas, and that is what drove it, rather than it being the religion that's driving the social change itself. It's the governmental policy. So then we had that nice little 10-mark question asked for us. Discuss how does Weber's view of social change differ from the Marxist view. So for that, what I'm going to be looking for is I'm going to be looking for a paragraph which says about Weber's view of social change. Then we're going to need a paragraph which talks about Marxist view of social change. We're going to then also need criticisms and some applications of those. So I would personally lay this out by going through and saying, right, okay, I'm going to do the Marxist bit first because I like doing that. I'm then going to apply it to the particular sort of situation. So I'm going to give like an example there, help with my application element. Then I'm going to do like a criticism of the Marxist approach. Then I'm going to talk about Weber, because I can then sort of stress within that next bit Weber's view. Then I can also point out in my application how that's really, really different from the Marxist point of view. And then what I do in my criticism, I will actually deliberately pick a Marxist criticism and use that again to have a go back at it. That's going to be really effective because that's going to help kind of tie in that second and final evaluation point as analysis, and that's going to be a really strong point there. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you guys have had a go at that one. That's a revision one for that. So I'm going to now record the lesson 3 for you and we'll go on from there.